I encourage everyone to take a moment and breathe and take a tea cheers with Ajiri tea. Ajiri tea recognizes the beauty in shared stories and shared opportunities. Ajiri sources award-winning tea from Kenya, employs women in the region to handcraft the labels, and sends 100% of the profits back to the region to support orphan education. Save 10% on your order of Kenyan teas and coffee with the code BeautifullyHuman at ajiritea.com. AJIRIT.com. Tea mugs up. Hello, and welcome to the Beautifully Human podcast. I'm Nick Sheesby. In this podcast, I speak with beautiful humans from all around the world, sharing with you their incredible stories, revealing the power in every human story, to spread love and humanity to a world that is in desperate need of it, to show that we can all connect in beautiful ways no matter where we come from or what we look like. What you will find out is that we are all beautifully human. Let's all be beautifully human. And this is beautiful. It's a blank slate. So, in that note, tell me where you grew up. Tell me your story.
Well, let's see. I was born in Maryland, but I can't remember all what I told you in the form that I sent you. But my mom was 16 years old whenever I was born. So she dropped out of high school after 10th grade. She got married to my dad. And, my dad was like 21, and he was a school bus driver. He wasn't really doing a whole lot. But neither one of my parents went to college, but my dad did, ironically enough, get a job with AT&T. And the job that he had required our family to move a lot. He worked on these crews that were going all through the Southeast, burying the long distance cables. And so, he was basically on this it's kind of a construction crew. And so, they'd go and they'd do a project in one town, and then our family would have to move to another town, wherever his next, project was that he was working on. So by the time I was 11 years old, we had lived in 40 different places.
Wow.
And my parents had a trailer that they hooked up to the back of my dad's pickup truck, and we would just move to another trailer park. And, so it was, I guess when I started school, they kind of managed it so we would just have to move once a year, So sometimes my dad might be away for a couple weeks at a time. There was a period of time where I remember, when I was in second grade, we lived in Ohio, and we'd actually moved into a townhouse out of the trailer, which was nice.
Yeah.
But he was working in New York, and he was just coming home every other weekend. But I went to a different school every year until I was, I actually in third and fourth grade, I was in the same school, but every other year I was in a different school until fifth grade, in different states, I went to kindergarten in Virginia. I went to first grade in Pennsylvania. I went to second grade in Ohio. Third and fourth grade were in Virginia again. And then we moved to Delaware. And I think it was mainly, of course, I didn't know any of this at the time, but I think that all the moving around and stuff really took a toll on my mom. Yeah. And so she, I think, wasn't very happy in the marriage. And so my dad took a job with one of the, what they call the baby bells. It was actually Diamond State Telephone, which is the telephone company in Delaware. And so we moved to this small town in Delaware. And then within a year of us moving there, my parents got divorced.
Oh, wow.
And then I just, we stayed in Delaware, which honestly, out of all the places that I lived growing up, I was probably not to say this, I probably wouldn't say this on the real podcast. It's probably one of the worst places, because it was just really, Delaware's on a peninsula, and it's very kind of isolated. It was very kind of rural area that we lived in. The only thing that was kind of nice is that it was close to the beach. So during the summer, it was a pretty big touristy area, but during the winter back then, it was pretty dead. But now it's like, my stomping ground is where, that's Joe Biden's.
Yeah.
He's got a house in Rehoboth, Delaware, which that was sort of my stomping grounds. And
Nice.
in fact, when I was in college, I worked as a waitress at this restaurant, and I waited on Joe Biden and his wife and his daughter,
No way.
which is so funny. Yeah, yeah. I
That's
mean,
pretty neat.
I knew who he was because he was our state senator, and
Sure.
it's a small state, so um, you know, he doesn't have a lot of ground to cover.
Right, right. Oh, that's so cool. Where in Ohio were you at?
Columbiana.
Okay. I grew up in Ohio. So I grew up
Hmm.
like an hour north of Columbus.
Okay.
So,
I don't even really. I think that Columbiana might be sort of like in the eastern part of Ohio. I'm not really
okay.
sure. I was so young.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, it's such a big state too. I always get questions of, well, you're from Ohio. Do you know this person? And I'm like, it's the seventh biggest state in the union. It's not a small place.
I know, isn't it funny? Every once in a while, though, when people will do that, like you'll be like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, I do know that person."
Right.
It's so
Because
funny.
there is truth to that. It is a very small world, so that separation that we have is very
Right.
very limited. So I
Yeah.
have had that happen where I go, well, yeah, okay, I do know that person.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Damn it, you win. All right. But it's not just like one road to Indiana and one road to Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a little
Exactly.
bigger than that.
Right. Little
So
bit bigger.
yeah, tiny bit. So what was it like changing schools that often when you were a kid?
It was hard. It was really hard. I mean, I was pretty shy when I was young, and I can remember my mom like coming in to tuck me into bed and telling me like, oh, we're going to be moving, and just crying my eyes out,
Sure.
because I'd make friends, and then I'd have to move, right, and I was always the new girl. And it's funny because even when I moved to Delaware and I was there for years, people would still be like, "Oh, there's Terry. She's the new girl," and I'm like, we've lived here for like 4 years." But honestly, in the town that we moved to, like nothing, there were families that were there for like generations, and
Right.
a lot of people that probably, you know, when they immigrated to the United States in like the 1700s, they just stayed there, and
Sure.
so that was, yeah, that was hard, but I will also say that it made me really adaptable,
Sure.
and I since I've graduated from college, like I've moved around, like
Yeah.
I think that once you kind of understand that, you'll figure it out, that you know some of the things that some people might fear about moving, I don't really have those fears.
Yeah, which I think that's a beautiful take from it is that adaptability. So many people, and I think it's a big trouble of what's going on in this country right now is people not knowing what is out there or not going to other places outside of their bubble and not feeling that adaptability, so they judge
Totally
people and they
agree.
do this. And I think that's a very important take out of something that was incredibly tough, you know,
Yeah.
doing as a
Yeah.
kid, to come out and be like, no, I got this. If I need to move somewhere, I'll figure it out. I'll find friends. I'll make I'll
Yeah.
make it work.
It made me more self-sufficient for sure, but it also kind of made me more guarded, because like when you're the new kid going in places, sometimes people will test you or bully you or that kind of thing, and I do think it made me a lot stronger.
Yeah,
But it also made it so that I didn't, like, I would be friendly with people, but I wasn't like, I wouldn't like be real, like become friends quickly with people, put it that
sure.
way.
Yeah,
Because, and I think part of it is that, like, okay, that not everybody's nice, some people are not. And also I think maybe just thinking that, maybe uh why get so attached, right? Because
yeah,
we might be moving away.
yeah, yeah. I completely understand that, especially as a kid, and I'm
Yeah.
just going into a new class and being constantly that new kid. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't imagine like I didn't have to do that, and I know it was tough. Even like I went to a small Christian school and then went to a bigger high
Hmm.
school, and it was even tough integrating, from a four room school to a massive high school, and it
Yeah.
was like
Yeah.
I was the new kid. I was the kid from the Christian school, and it was
Hmm.
like I had to adapt and figure it out. So
Right.
I can totally understand, yeah, being guarded, especially
Yeah.
with, like it's such a time as a kid when you're making friends, you're learning new stuff, and then it's like, oh, like got this new friend, but now I'm gone.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that was sort of, it was definitely heartbreaking, and I am a little envious sometimes too, when people are like, oh, like my maid of honor in my wedding was like my friend that I knew ever since kindergarten, and actually I've got 3 kids, and that's one of the things my husband and I are like pretty proud about, that our kids have those long standing relationships. We moved here to the Chicagoland area from North Carolina 15 years ago, and my kids were 8, 6, and 2 when we moved. And so I think my oldest son was like in 3rd grade, or maybe 2nd grade. I can't remember. I think maybe 2nd grade. And we just lived here ever since then. So he had to, they had to move, but they've had friends ever since elementary school. Like my daughter has friends that she met in preschool.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy that they have that, but I'm also a little bit envious that I never had that.
Right. Yeah, of course. So what? I'm guessing your children are a little older now.
Hmm.
Obviously from hearing
Yeah.
the ages they moved there. What was it like in 2020? Like I know I have friends who have
Hmm.
younger kids, and it was a whole
Hmm.
different world. Like from a mom's perspective, what was 2020 like?
Um, well, I actually look at the things that are positive about 2020. Like my oldest son graduated from college in 2019, and he was a film major, and his plan was to come home, save up money, and then like move to LA.
Yep.
And so he got a job as a bartender at this vodka distillery. It's like kind of a hip place that's like in the next town from us. And he was really enjoying it, right? He just really was enjoying like learning how to make like specialty cocktails, and he really loved the, you know, thing of like meeting people at the bar and chatting them up and all of that. And he did save up a lot of money, but then of course the bar shut down,
Right.
right? And so he hasn't been working. He's been doing a little bit of my husband used to be a professional photographer, but he went back into banking. And so my son has been able to fill in for some of the photography shoots that my husband used to do. Like he's like done shoots at like golf tournaments and stuff like
Sure.
that. If there's like a father-son golf tournament or something, they want to get like pictures of all the foursomes. So
Yeah.
he's been able to get like a little bit of project work like that here and there. But he's just been around the house, and that it's actually been really nice because we get to see our kids a lot more. My
Yeah.
middle son, he actually was in college, and he was like commuting from our house to a college in downtown Chicago, and he just luckily decided to take the spring semester off. So he didn't have, it just was lucky, I guess.
Yeah.
But he has since gotten a job at Starbucks, and he transferred to Arizona State, where he's doing the online program that Starbucks will pay for.
Oh wow.
And so, he's working, but he's living at home, and, we don't see him as much because he works a good amount.
Yeah.
But it's still like really nice to have, like, we went through a couple of years where our kids, the oldest 2, were out of the house completely. And
Yeah.
so we were almost like empty nesters. So we just get to see them more with COVID, which is nice. And then my daughter is 17, and she's a junior in high school, and she's been going to school completely online. But because she's 17, she's very self-sufficient. I don't
Sure.
really have to do anything. But again, it's nice to see her, right? Like
Yeah.
she'll be sitting out at the bar in the kitchen, like doing her little Zoom classes. And so I guess I would say that it's it's been nice. I
Yeah.
mean, I hate to, it's kind of a drag that we don't get to get out. And there's a lot of things that I feel like I missed out on over the last, like my husband and I did go away for a few days to Michigan, but we usually do like a big family vacation to the beach or something like that. And obviously we're not doing that. And we live close to a outdoor music venue. And usually in the summer, that's like a big thing that we do because they have like a huge lawn. You know, you can get
Tinley Park.
No, it's Ravinia.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And, you know, they've got like you can sit inside in the amphitheater part, like open air amphitheater, but then they have a huge lawn and you can either get like lawn tickets or tickets in the amphitheater. And, you know, usually we'll probably go to at least 6 concerts. Yeah. And, you know, that's a big part. It's a big part of our summer. Like we get together with friends and, you know, do that kind of stuff. And we didn't get to do that. So it's been disruptive.
Totally. I know. I talked to a friend of mine who I think he's in his 60s, and 2 of his daughters who are in their 30s came home because it was quarantine, and one lived here, one lived in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and they just wanted to quarantine together because they all lived, you know, they lived by themselves in their separate locations, and they came home. And I think that's been such a nice thing. Like, I know 2020 has been devastating for so many people, and it's just been a brutal year, but also it is that, you know, there has been silver linings, right? Like,
absolutely.
The time that we have all been able to have, you know, and it's like, how many times have we said, well, I didn't have time. I don't have time to do that, you know, and now it's like, we don't
have a choice. Like nowadays, isn't it right? One of the things that I think has been like really cool and a neat thing that happened this year for us is that, we've got bags or cornhole, you know, that game, like where you throw the bean bags. My husband has a set, and like normally in the summer, like he just gets together out in like our neighborhood, like on the sidewalk with other guys in the neighborhood and plays. But it's been like something that we've done as a family, right? Like that my husband would text and be like, hey, who wants to play bags tonight when I get home from work? And so like just starting in the summer, like we'd be outside playing bags, and like my son, he's 23, who's out of college, a lot of his friends moved home and are working from their parents' houses too. Like, why pay rent, right? If you can just live in the basement or whatever. And so sometimes his friends would come over and play bags against like me and my husband and my son and one of his friends. And it's, you know, it's safe to do it. We're outside. Right. And it was just a fun little thing that like popped out of like, we don't have anything else to do. Let's just go out and play some bags. Totally. You know, we get our little speaker out there, our little, you know, portable speaker, and play music and, you know, maybe have a couple drinks or something. It's really fun.
Definitely. Yeah. I think, you know, I think people will look back at it, even if they're having a negative attitude about it. And when the world starts back into that pace of go, 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 I think people are going to look back and go, damn it, I should have appreciated that time. You know, like we're all guilty of it. Like, I like to think that I'm using every minute wisely, which of course I'm not, you know, but you know, it's like, if you look at it of just use that time to start a podcast or, you know, like, talk to people or, you know, like just kind of reinvent, you know, cause like you said, you go to 6 or 7 concerts a year. I've been in the music industry for 15 years. I tour with bands for a living. So I've been decimated. I had some awesome work coming up, and you know, it's like, okay, what is it going to be this year? You know, like, I mean, adaptability is a very good word that you brought up earlier. And I've had to do that with touring, you know, I'm constantly traveling and this and that. And so it was like, okay, now I have all this time. I have to adapt. I have to do something different. And, you know, it's like, I have all this time, so I'll just make it as good as I can, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know, the funny thing about like time in our lives is that we're not really promised anything, right? And I don't know. I think the key to happiness is just accepting what is and making the best of it, right? And so often there are just beautiful, beautiful gifts that come our way if we're only willing to see it that way. and I haven't, yeah, I mean, it's been, I mean, I work from home most of the time anyway, because I'm an executive and career coach. So I'm usually like doing Zoom calls or talking to people on the phone. So it didn't really impact me that much. I mean, every once in a while I would get out and meet somebody in person, but it didn't impact me that much. But I think just not being able to get out and just having so much, kind of monotony has been a little crazy making, and not being able to see friends. And, we usually would go out to eat, a couple times a week probably, and get together with friends and stuff like that. And that's been very curtailed. It's been a little bit boring, but on the other hand, I mean, there's been a lot of really nice things too.
Yeah. And I think we all just took it for granted how much connection we were able to have, and I think going forward, if we look at it, we'll take those chances to see people. And I mean, I've reconnected with a lot of people through Zoom or FaceTime or whatever,
totally.
Like I never liked being on the phone before. Now I'm like, well, that's my way of talking to people.
Yeah, that's your choice.
Right. I either don't catch up with people or I get on the phone with them, So,
yeah, exactly.
It's opened up new levels of communication, and it's tough not seeing people. And it's I don't love going out and kind of like cringing when I see people, or like trying, like that weird feeling of I don't want to give anything to you. I don't, that whole feeling of
totally. Just being worried about like not knowing. I know it's so funny. We'll walk around our neighborhood and, take the dog out for a walk or whatever. And, we've lived here for 15 years, so we know a lot of people in the neighborhood. And back probably, I don't know, early summer, we ran into one of our neighbors, and they had a son that was the age of one of our sons. And so like we knew him pretty well. And my husband, like just out of habit, went up to give the woman a hug.
Oh, gosh.
Like he just completely lost his mind. And it was so hilarious because like it was her and then another neighbor and then us standing there talking, and he like went up to give her a hug, and it was almost like slow motion that we were all just like,
oh,
no.
God.
And she was like cringing back from it, and we were like, Scott, what are you doing? And he was like, oh my God, he was like, I just haven't seen her in a long time. I wanted to give her a hug. And I was like, yeah, you can't do that.
Right. Yeah. It's those little details.
It's weird.
Yeah. I'm the same. Anytime I see a friend, like one nice thing too is we've done a lot of socially distant fires. I love bonfires. So, it's one thing that's pretty easy to do. You spread out, light a big fire and enjoy. But yeah, it's weird when you go in. I think the first time I did it, I was about to go hug somebody and I was like, nope, I can't do it.
Yeah.
Can't do it.
Right.
Oh, it's too funny. Yeah. So what, so your career coaching, how did you get into this?
It's funny when I think back over my whole life, I feel like I've probably sort of had the coaching gene since I was a kid. I'm the oldest of 4 girls. And so I think being the big sister that I just was sort of like naturally helping. And I've also just really liked problem solving. When I was in school, I would help other kids with, if the teacher was teaching a concept that kids weren't getting and I got it, I would just like help people understand it in a different way. But I've always really been interested in career advancement, when I started my career after college. And so I was always reading books on leadership and, self-improvement and stuff like that. And a couple times in my career, I actually hired coaches to help me. Like one time I interviewed my boss at this company left, and I interviewed for his position, and I'd been kind of his right-hand person. And so I kind of felt like I was the heir apparent. But when I went in, sorry if you hear my dog in the background, she's like coughing. Anyway, I went into the interview, like I just didn't think that I had to prepare. I just didn't think about it quite honestly. And I went into the interview and I bombed. And I like left feeling so humiliated, and I got eliminated from the process. But it motivated me to hire a career coach to help me, because I just didn't want to have that feeling again, like, oh, I just bombed. And because I thought pretty highly of myself. I thought like, oh, I felt like I was smart and I was capable and I was ready to move to the next level up. And, I didn't want to let my inability to be a good interviewer or interviewee stand in the way.
Right.
And so the funny thing about that whole situation was, like, the company went through this whole process of interviewing for that job, and they offered the job to somebody and she turned it down. And so instead of them like going to the next person, like maybe their number 2 candidate, they started the process all over again. And so I actually applied again. And the second time I applied, I got all the way down to the finals. It was like me and one other person that was outside the company. Unfortunately, that person got the job offer and he took it. But the day I found out that I didn't get the job, I had a call from a recruiter. And by the time, like maybe like 3 months later, I had gotten 2 job offers and I was interviewing for another job. And I took one of the jobs, and it was the one that moved me here to Chicago. So, obviously I realized that career coaching worked.
Yeah.
And, I worked at the job I had here in Chicago for 12 years. And I really had 4 jobs in that 12 years. And by the time, the 12th year came around, I was kind of like, I've outgrown this company. I didn't really see any places for me to go. And so I decided to leave, and I said to myself, like, what am I good at and what do I like to do?
Yeah.
And as I led teams of marketers in the whole 12 years I was there. And I always really enjoyed the mentoring and coaching aspect of being a manager. So I just decided that I would get the certification in coaching. And I initially wasn't even sure that I would, do it full time. I thought that I would just sort of have it in my back pocket and, have a couple clients on the side. And maybe when I got to retirement, and then I would do it full time. But in the coaching program that I was going through, there were so many people that were planning on doing it full time that it just got me thinking, like, well, hey, why don't I just give it a shot, doing it full time? And here I am.
Nice.
It's like almost 4 years later, and I'm still doing it.
That's so great. I think it's just I love the empowerment part of that. It's, of course, like, a career is such a massive step for people, and I didn't make it through college, but I know, like, when I have to interview, even now, I get freaked out, even if I know what I'm doing, even if I know I'm like super prepared, I get nervous. So I think that's such a beautiful gift you're giving to people of empowerment, and like, just trust yourself and hear these, like, you have the skills, but like, bring them out in those people, and then just show them.
Right. I mean, a lot of people get really self-conscious when it comes time to interview, and it's not that they're not capable, it's just that their nerves or they're feeling under a microscope, and so it causes them to not be able to perform to their potential. So there's a lot of little tricks and advice that I have for people about how to get themselves in the right mindset and to prepare themselves for to pretty much let themselves shine.
Yeah. I do love that. I have my partner, she does life coaching. So and it's funny, I didn't even realize these were things until I talked to her.
Yeah.
And she said life coach, and I said, what is that? That's pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I was like, oh, well, there's certifications for it. And then when your message popped up, I was like, career. Yes, of course. That makes so much sense. That's so it's so cool. I love that, it's like, you have these skills and you learn this part of life, and you're able to create something out of it. It's that adaptability again. It's knowing what and giving it to people.
Yeah, just really trying to help people, achieve their goals, right? And a lot of times people kind of run up against obstacles, and all they know is to kind of try to surmount the obstacle. And you can only know what you know, right? And sometimes being a partner with them to help them kind of expand. I always think of it as like people having blinders on. And what I do is like help them peel back the blinders so that they can see more of the options that are available to them. Because a lot of times we have these like subconscious beliefs that keep us from even recognizing that something might be an option for us.
Totally. I mean, like I started this, The Beautifully Human, as a blog. I wrote a bunch of questions out, and it was just a quick backstory of why it all came up. Was I had told my story. I'm 28 months sober now. And so when I started telling my story, I just felt empowered from it. I got that feeling of like, yeah, man, this is awesome. And so I started to just think of these questions, and they're just basic life questions, and like they're hard questions to answer because they are life questions, right? And also I've noticed it with so many people that I have messaged about just answering the questions, or being on this podcast. So many people will say, "Me? Why me?
Why not?
Why would it?" Right. That's what I would say.
Right.
I was like, every person has a story. Like,
everybody does.
What you think is mundane is super meaningful to that other person. That struggle that you have, that you think is just silly, will resonate with somebody. Like, every story is important. Every person is valid. And so that was where I came from with it. So I love that you're doing that as well. And like making that person see in themselves, I'm good, I'm valid, I can do this.
Yeah.
You have these skills in you. I'm just gonna
totally
tweak this little bit here, just in your mind, to give that to you.
Yes, exactly. So that they can just kind of find that path to keep going forward. Because I think a lot of times people, when they run into obstacles, they start thinking that something's wrong with them. And, I don't think that that's true in any case. And I mean, part of my mission is to help people recognize that they matter, and them being happy matters. Because a lot of times people, I talk about working with people that are successful but not satisfied. And what I mean by that is that, they've got the title, they've got a job at, good company, they're making a good amount of money, whatever, but they're paying a really high price for that quote unquote success. They're feeling stressed out, they're feeling burnout, maybe they're having health issues, maybe they can't sleep, or they're having relationship issues. And my desire is to help them expand that overlap between their professional success and their personal happiness, because we really shouldn't have to sacrifice our personal happiness for success. Because I mean, honestly, what's the point, right?
Yeah.
You're going to die, or, you're going to be a rich 40-year-old when you die, right? Like, who cares?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to that note, like when I had to get sober, my liver was failing. So I was literally on my deathbed. And I mean, I'll tell you, the last things that I was thinking about was the money that I had made, what my bank account looked like.
Right.
It doesn't matter. I would have been a 33-year-old who passed. Like, if I had been a billionaire, I was just another 33-year-old billionaire that might not have enjoyed my life, so especially moving from that, like, I love that, I love that you're pushing that mission, because I know so many people that just literally live to work, and that just doesn't make sense to me. Like, of course we have to work and to
pay the rent,
to pay the rent, and
keep groceries on the table and all that.
Sure. The typical stuff. But you have to have a quality of life at the same point, so I love that you're crossing that bridge for people. Yeah. I mean, that one's a tough one. I think a lot of people struggle with, and I'm sure you're finding that.
Oh, I totally find it. And one of the things that I see is that, people who tend to be, high achievers, they've learned to focus, pretty strongly on what's expected of them by people externally. So what does my teacher expect? What does my boss expect? What do my parents expect?
Right.
And, they become quote unquote successful by meeting other people's expectations, and they get rewarded for that.
Right.
But what can happen over time is that they've learned to kind of sublimate their own desires, right? There's this whole idea of delayed gratification, but sometimes they delay for so long that they lose touch with what their real desires are, or
Right.
they've told themselves that, I'm not going to be successful if I do things that I enjoy. And, part of what my mission is to help people realize that, at some point you've got to switch back to, validating yourself.
Yeah.
Right. Because it gets to a point and, you think about it like, okay, once you become, say into your, early to mid 20s, like you're an adult. You do
Yeah.
not need your parents' approval anymore,
Right.
but sometimes you'll see people that are like 40 or 45 years old or older worrying about what their parents think. And they're doing things that they're not happy with in their lives because they don't want to be criticized by their parents. Right. And or their boss or whoever. And at some point you just got to be like, look, this is my life. This is what's going to make me happy. And I'm just going to stand up for that matters, right? And the whole idea there is just, deciding what you want and setting boundaries so that people, will respect what it is that you want.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think that's such a big one is just, expectancies from other people. I know. I mean, I think every kid has it, and
Yeah, everybody does have it. It's a hard one to, well, I always say like the first no is the hardest. Like when somebody's, one of the things that people will complain to me, people I work with will complain a lot. Well, my boss, emails me and texts me over the weekend and, he expects me to email him back right away. And I was like, well, first of all, are you sure that he expects that?
Right.
You're assuming that's what he expects. But, what if you just said, listen, I'll get you that information first thing on Monday morning. I'll get
Right.
up in the morning and I'll, that maybe the boss isn't going to like it, but you're probably not going to get fired, right? To set a boundary to say like, look, the weekends are, sacred for my family. I need that time to recharge and to be, present for my family. And unless there's like some, huge crisis going on, and then, it can probably wait till Monday morning.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Speaking of, I think it's a good transition. Keeping your mental health and doing life for yourself and keeping that good balance. And you talked about doing trips, and obviously none of us got to do, like the trips that we would have loved this year. But I always like to ask the question: if I came to you and there was no COVID, no restrictions, if I gave you a plane ticket to anywhere in the world, where would you go?
Oh my gosh. Wow. Where would I go? There's so many places that I would like to go. I think I'd like to go to Paris. I haven't been to Paris yet. I mean, I've been to, a few places that I would love to go again, but that's one place that I really like to go. And then plus I think that if I did have that, I'd just get like, one of those train passes and just go all over Europe because there's a lot of places that I'd like to see in Europe.
Yeah, Paris is pretty unreal when you get there. It's just as magical as it has been, perceived. It is. The first time I got there, I was just walking around like, oh my god, this place is.
See, I would just love that.
Brilliant.
I mean, the only place I've been in Europe is London, and I've been there a few times, and I was blown away by London. I didn't think that it was going to. I didn't think I was going to like it as much as I did. And what I actually realized was that, when you go to places like Washington, D.C., that you see that like they're trying to be London, like
big time,
with all of the with the obelisks and the statues. But I was like, okay, now I kind of it made me realize, what a huge superpower Great Britain was.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And that, us in the colonies were just trying to emulate that. And we were not actually doing a great job of it. Like once you go there, you're like, oh my God, this place is, the cathedrals and the buildings and just crazy.
Yeah, that is so true. I was speaking to a friend who grew up in Zimbabwe the other day, and he was talking about the British colonization. And I was just like, you forget about that when you don't think about it a lot. But the
Mm-hmm.
British were everywhere. I mean,
Yeah,
Australia,
they were.
South Africa. I mean,
Right.
literally here. It's like, why do we speak English? It's not because it's an
Mm-hmm.
American language. It's the English language.
Right. Yeah,
And
exactly.
they just, yeah, it's wild. And I didn't think I didn't know what to expect from London. And London was the first place I got hired to go on a tour. And so the first time I ever went to Europe was actually getting paid to go, which was super
Mm-hmm.
rad. I got to go to, I think, 13 different countries, which
Oh, cool.
unbelievable, right? And super fortunate. But yeah, I went to London, and yeah, I didn't know what to expect. I'd seen it in movies, and
Yeah,
I'd just
exactly.
seen this place, and I got there, and I loved it. I absolutely
Yeah.
loved it. It was so cool, and it's funny that you said that because I hadn't actually thought about it the way you just mentioned that. But now that I'm like, oh my god, yeah, that is so true. it's so
Yeah, yeah,
it's
just
so
yeah, just really crazy. I went there for work also, but every time that I went, I would tack on a couple days and do, like kind of touristy things. Like I went to Stonehenge and
oh
Bath
cool,
and Windsor Castle.
beautiful.
And although I will say, like, Stonehenge was cool, but I thought I was going to go and it would be like, and I was like, oh, there's like a lot of rocks in this big sheep field.
Yeah,
It was like, it wasn't as magical as what I thought. It was a very long drive to get there, but Bath was really cool. I don't know if you've been there, but
I have
that was.
not. I have not, but I would love to. But it is funny. I've been to. Funny enough, there's this website called Atlas Obscura,
Oh, okay. Uh-huh.
where they just like anywhere you are in the world, you can go to this website and just click what's near me, and it just tells you just like random shit that's there. That's
Yeah.
just like, for example, when I was in, I forget what city in Texas, but I looked it up and it was like, there's a replica Stonehenge. So I've been,
Oh, that's
so
funny.
my friends and
So you've
I,
been to the Texas
yeah, I've
Stonehenge.
been to a Texas Stonehenge. I went to one, and there was another one I went to. So I've been to a couple, but it was just funny. Like, I think after the magic of just being like, how did this even happen?
Yeah,
How did those
right.
rocks get there? It's like Mount Rushmore. I went to Mount Rushmore, and I thought, oh my god, I'm gonna be in just like,
Yeah.
whoa, crazy. And I got there, and all of us, there was four of us, and we looked at it, and we sat there for like 5 minutes, and then it was like, all right,
Oh, yeah. I've
we
heard
saw
that
it.
that's not like that. People are kind of like, oh, it's smaller than it seems like. I don't know. Have you been to the Grand Canyon? No, that's the because
Yes.
that was the opposite for me. I was, and, like we've seen that so many times on TV, and I just thought, like, okay, yeah, I've seen the Grand Canyon, and we went with my whole family went, and we were all just like, wow, wow, wow. It's just
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah, it was cool. The first time I ever saw it, I was flying from Salt Lake to Phoenix. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
actually flew over it, which was really
Yeah.
rad. And I was thankful
Yeah.
that the pilot was like, if you look out,
Yes.
there's the Grand Canyon. And like
Yeah.
to see it from up there is bonkers. But then
Yes.
a friend of mine and I, we did like some off boundary camping. And so
Oh,
we were
cool.
like right on the rim. I mean, we were 5 feet from the rim, and it's just never ending. It's just so
Yeah,
vast that like
crazy.
I couldn't
I
even
know.
comprehend it at times. It
Yeah.
was just like,
Yeah.
what is this? And the air is so just thin because it just goes. There's
Yeah.
nothing reflecting it, and it was pretty magical. Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah. It's
So,
amazing.
so what is your favorite place you've been in your travels?
I think that probably the favorite place I've been is Maui.
Yeah.
There was so much. I mean, I love the beach anyway, and there was just so much going on that island. Like we went up to the top of Haleakala and, did like trips, out to like an atoll and went snorkeling and, just was really, really a cool place. I think also my whole life, I just always wanted to go to Hawaii. And so going there, I just felt so like, I felt like it was such a huge gift
Yeah.
to, give that trip to me and my family to go there. It was really cool.
Yeah. I love the vibe over there. It's just
I did too.
so
It just
laid
was-
back.
Yeah, just really, really beautiful. And I love of course, the climate is just perfect.
Yeah.
It's just beautiful.
Yeah, my partner's parents are thinking of moving there next year. So I was like, hey, I'm not mad about going back to Hawaii
Yeah.
to visit.
Yeah.
I'm
yeah,
okay with that.
Exactly.
I went
Exactly.
like 10 years ago and I still love it, but it's one of those that's really hard to get back to, for me at least,
Yes, it's a long flight for sure.
because typically if I've been a place, I usually tend to go other places,
Yeah.
try to check
Yeah, I
all of them
know.
off.
Well, and that, it's funny that you say that because, I would definitely like to go back, but I'd probably go to a different island if I went back to Hawaii. I really love to go to the Big Island,
Yeah.
and I think that there's so much that seems really cool there with like the volcano and all
Yeah,
of that.
definitely.
But yeah, I'm kind of with you. I mean, I will go back to places like I've actually gone to a lot of places for business and, kind of gotten a taste of it and then said, okay, well, now I'm going to go back with my family and maybe we'll go on a vacation or something like that.
Sure.
But I really do like to explore new places too.
Yeah, I'm the same. With touring, I've been to cities, like I've been to Chicago 100 times, and there's other places I've been to a ton of times, but I'm working, so I'm in a venue, I'm in the arena,
Right.
I'm in the football stadium, and I don't
Yep.
see much other than that, or like the bar next door or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, there are places that I'm like, okay, now that I've seen this for work, I will come back
come
here.
back and be
I'll
able
come
to
back
do
and check it out.
Yeah. And that's definitely, kind of what my experience has been too. Cause I worked for a bank and I worked in marketing and a lot of what we did was events and we would do like client events or do, like a golf tournament or something for clients. And, so you get to see nice things, but you're working, right? Or, I'm staying in a nice hotel, but I'm like in a basement meeting room all day long, right?
Right.
Sometimes like all I saw was like what I could see from the cab window on the way from the airport, which you probably can relate to, right? Like, cause you're there to work.
Yeah. Fly in, go to the hotel, go straight to the venue. I see what I see in between on the cabs and the Ubers, and that's that.
Yeah. What instrument do you play?
I don't actually play. I'm on crew, so I run.
Oh, okay, got
I
it.
run like the VIP experiences or merchandise.
Oh, okay, yeah, got it. All right.
So it's. I let them have all the fame, and I do the behind the scenes.
You're like the supporting cast. I mean that actually sounds. I think that we probably have a lot in common when it comes to that because when you work in marketing for an organization, you're there to like make the leaders look good.
Yep.
Like I would be the person, telling the president of the division, like, okay, now it's time for you to go up on stage, and this is what you need to say. And by the way, here's your housekeeping notes that you have to tell everybody. And, we're going to have the buses lined up out front for everybody to go on their little tour after this, session's over.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. So, yeah.
It's very similar. And it's funny, I just thought of this, but like I've had so many times when I've wanted to put my resume in for other types of jobs off the road. And it's funny how if somebody looks at my resume, they look at it and they're like, what the hell is this? This makes no sense to me, because it's a lot of tour lingo, I guess. And, it's like, but also if I would be able to get in and sit down and talk with those people, I could be like, I do a ton of accounting, like massive accounting. Cause I keep track of
the merch.
$20,000 a night in merchandise. I'm a crazy retail salesman because I do that all by myself in one night in 3 hours, and logistics, like timing, all this stuff. And I'm like, it's funny that you said that because I was like, yeah, that's pretty, right on.
It's funny that that's also one of the things that I will work with people on from a career coaching standpoint is that very often people want to pivot in their career and they're like, but I've just done this my whole life. And I'm like, yeah, there's transferable skills there.
Yeah.
You just have to like kind of package it in a way that people can see that.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, one of the things I've noticed is that many people don't have much imagination.
Right.
So you have to like connect the dots for them.
Yeah. Mine, I've had that where I finally get to talk to somebody about a job in a different field, and then I tell them what I've done, and they're like, "Oh, wow!" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's just be imaginative with my resume. Like, look at it and say like, oh, merchandise. He's probably good with numbers, or it's like, you gotta be adaptable. You gotta switch and look at those things.
Yep.
All right, I have 2 more questions for you that I like to ask everybody that's on with me. What would you want the world to know about you?
Wow. What would they want? Oh my gosh. That's like kind of a hard question.
Yeah.
For me. I don't know why. I guess, what would I want the world to know about me? That is such a hard question. Because I am always thinking about, like, what do I want other people to know about themselves?
Yep.
And I guess the thing I would want people to know about me is that, I don't know. I just really believe that anything's possible. I mean, I'm like very much an optimist.
Yeah.
And what I'm really trying to do on earth is help people to recognize that the things they want are worthy, and that I believe that they're capable of making their dreams come true. And so, I mean, that's really kind of what I want to be, is just somebody who holds space and is encouraging and optimistic, so that we can all, get to a place that we're really happy.
Yeah. I love that. I that is so important, especially in these times, this year, but beyond this year, just in this time in general. I think that's such a beautiful message, and I love that you're doing it in such a field that is tied so much to people's happiness, or they think it's so tied to it. Like, I got to have this big job, I got to have this, and I love that you're like, yeah, let's get you that and make you happy, but also let's
expand, right? Like, you can be successful and you can be happy.
Yeah.
It's not an either or proposition.
Yeah. So I think that's beautiful. I love that mission that you're on. I think that's incredibly important these days. All right. Last one. If you had the ear of everybody in the world, what would you say to them?
What I would say is that you matter, and that you are put here on this earth for a reason, and we all need to go out and figure out what that is, right? Don't hide your beauty. Don't hide the reason why you're here, okay? Like, we're all unique, and we do not need to compare ourselves to other people. And, we're all just perfect exactly the way that we are.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, it just popped in my mind of these lyrics that I resonate with, and it kind of goes to your point where it's like, we're bruised, we're broken, but we're perfect just as we are. We're goddamn works of art. And I was
yes, we are.
Yes,
we are.
I love that.
Well, what do they say? Like, you become stronger in the broken parts.
Yeah.
I think that's true.
Yeah, and we learn, as much as people don't love to fail, I mean, we learn when we fall on our faces.
We absolutely do. There's a saying that I'll like share sometimes, which is, even when you fall on your face, you're still moving forward.
Wow, I love that.
I know, I love that too.
That's so good. That's so good. Well, I thank you so much for your time. I've really enjoyed chatting with you.
Yeah, me too. This
has been super fun. All right.
Yep.
Have a beautiful rest of your day.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to the Beautifully Human podcast. To hear more beautiful stories from beautiful humans, follow us on Spotify and rate and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Instagram @Wanderlust Moon Duo. Peace signs up.